beautiful film. Did you guys love
Absolutely.
it? I am so honored to be here on opening weekend. I love this film so much, and I'm really excited to be here to talk with Greta Lee and Teo Yoo. So I'll bring them on down. Wow, I'm like, they've just seen this film, like, I almost wanna, like, be like, what'd you think? Because I was breathless, like, I was speechless, I was so moved. I love how tender and how understated in this beautiful, fragile, delicate, and I love films that just pose these complicated questions as opposed to answers. But I do want to know which team everybody's on after. So.
Yeah, they're t-shirts, you know. It's on Team Arthur.
There's a lot of debating going on, I have a feeling. Well, I'll start by just asking you both, you know, how you got involved in the project, like what it felt like when you first read the script, and what made you decide to do this project?
Yeah, I think the process was pretty traditional for me in that initially I was rejected. Just to keep continuity in terms of how this goes. But I read this script and I was like completely gutted by the script. I cried a lot, and I'm not ashamed. I know Teo cried a lot too, so I feel absolutely no shame in revealing that. I'd never read a script like that before. I didn't know Celine, and I was totally taken aback. I was like, who is this person, and how dare she subvert romantic dramas in this way? And I was almost baffled by how she did it. Like, I felt like, oh, this is sneaky. How in a movie that is mostly in Korean? And this is a kind of movie that I've loved for so long. And it's basically the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, is this hope to be a part of movies like this. But it was immediately clear from the jump that she was intending to make this movie that subverts a more conventional idea of what makes a romantic drama, a modern day love story, or a modern love triangle. It was totally free of some of the melodrama and the fighting. There's like no explicit anything. There's some hugging. I think there's a kiss once maybe. But the way she was able to do that with so much just badass restraint and quiet, it felt so bold. And then it was able to Trojan horse this like much bigger feeling that stays with you, I think. It did for me when I was reading the script. It makes it take something that feels so intimate and small and simple, I think, and then somehow makes it feel cosmic and existential and so much bigger than that. So anyways, after I was rejected, initially the story, the triptych ends with the characters in their 20s. At the time, Celine, it's autobiographical, she was 27. And it was cast with 2 other actors, but then the script changed and they needed older people, which is thrilling for me. And I got a call out of the blue. It was one of those scenarios and where crazy things can happen in this business, and she asked to meet that day. And we were on Zoom reading through some scenes together and had this conversation about her vision for this movie. And she offered me the job on the spot. And then a year exactly from that day, we premiered at Sundance. 2 years from that day, but on that date. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Teo. I do speak English. I got the audition via my American manager. I'm based in Korea. I think they also had a search in Korea, but you know, one of the reasons why I love this script so much is because of my notion of melancholy. She laughs because she's like, oh, that's such a Teo thing to
It's
say.
such a German thing to say, you know.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Germany. And for Koreans who are born and raised abroad, we have a term which is kyupo, which always gave me kind of a feeling of displacement and loneliness, but not in an existential way, but just something like where you don't feel like you belong really, and you feel like an outsider with an undercurrent of melancholy. Not only because I'm, I guess, like more of a sensitive type, but because I was influenced by films that had those kind of notions, and I was inspired by them, mainly Wong Kar-wai, you know. But yeah, so I was, yeah, so I was always inspired to be in a project like this, and so yeah, I remember just like reading it and being so happy that I can even audition for this, and then also crying while reading it, which is really hard, you know, like it's easier to music and to films, but you know, reading it and it popped just out of the, you know, out of the skirt, out of the page. Yeah, so I was happy to yeah, I had a callback, and then like 2 weeks later I found out that I got it. And I was just happy that Celine saw in me that same type of, I guess, melancholy, and someone that can. Is she making a face? Yeah, an artist who can play me at like an instrument, you know, in this cinematic language. So I was really happy about that. Yeah.
What I love about this film, and I'm going to speak very frankly because Arthur Jamagar is not here, so we can just talk right here about this couple.
About the white guy, yeah?
Yeah, let's forget him.
Easy now. My
I'm
husband.
Team Hasan, so. I'm just kidding. You will not know who I am team until the very end. But you know, I think this film is much more than just a love triangle. Like, I think it says so much about like who we are based on who we loved, based on who we were in our past lives. And it's as much longing for someone in your past life as it is longing for that version of you, right? So I want you guys both to talk a little bit about what you think in the film you mean to each other, and what that love represents, and you know, kind of what you brought from your own lives into that relationship.
Okay. From the beginning, we had these conversations about this idea that what if we can tell this love story, what if we could subvert this genre and make it sci-fi, or like a mystery, but I say sci-fi because we were talking specifically about this idea where certain people in your life can almost act like a mirror that's held up to you, or like a hologram to a different part of you, and also a different part of your life from a different time. So in the script, it was pretty clearly painted in terms of this dynamic between Nora and Haesung that they have together, that not only does he represent, not only is he just on a practical level this guy who she loved since she was young, but he reflects back to her this whole life that she could have had as a Korean woman, living somewhere completely else. So a lot of the pain, the devastation, and it can mean different things to you, but for me, that the end, it's so much more than just saying goodbye to Haesung. It's saying goodbye to everything that she could have had if she had chosen that life, if she had stayed, and saying goodbye to elements of her, to her Koreanness too, which is something that I felt in making the movie afterwards. I was so totally devastated, just like realizing, oh, I'm not really going to be speaking that much Korean anymore. and what that meant for me, because it's almost like I had forgotten that I'm fluent in Korean until I did this movie, because I'd never been asked to do something like this. And it really hurt, honestly. Just reconciling with how much I had let go in order to live my life here as an American, as this person. It was really fun.
So one of the other reasons why I love the script so much is because Western audiences get an introduction about the concept of In-yeon. And In-yeon is something that we in Korea almost use on a daily basis, like day-to-day life, like very casual, even though we understand like it's leaning upon the concept of reincarnation. So to come back to your question, we haven't talked about it, I think, but for me, like emotionally preparing for the character, it wasn't that hard because it was already kind of like digested.
Because
into
you're
my
German
system.
and you have a keen access to your melancholy.
Also that, but also because I'm Korean, and I have a keen access towards, I guess, the system or the idea, and therefore giving it value while acting upon it on screen. That this moment we're sitting here, and this is also like in Korea we would say, oh, In-yeon이에요, like this, or In-yeon, with Lulu. It's just like that there's something that happened in our previous life. And then going in depth through that imaginary circumstance, that thinking about, okay, why are we sitting right now at this moment together next to each other and talk about something like this? So there's this moment in the bar where we do that, right, in a very casual way. But in Korea, like you would go casually deeper into it, saying like, maybe we were really like really crazy lovers in like one lifetime, and then in the next I was your slave, and then in the next you were my pet, and it extends to like object, like inanimate objects as well. So
Like you could be a lover with the chair that you're sitting
exactly.
in past life.
Yeah. So like this. So it's like in a humorous way and in a very casual way we talk about it. So to me, I mean, we have never really talked about it, right, for the characters, but for me, I did that prep. Yeah.
It makes me really sad because American culture just doesn't have so much of that. You're at a bar, you're never like, you in that chair, what was your past life? You don't have that. You're just like, what are you drinking? How many shots do you have last night? Like, I don't know. That's so deep.
It is so different. We talked about how in America, in the West, in this world that we live in, even the idea of love or destiny and fate, it feels like we understand it as such an actionable item. It is presented to us as like, what should we do? What should we do about that? But culturally, in Korea, and the core of this movie, it's acknowledging that love and destiny and the choices that we make, all of these things are sort of, they exist on their own. And something like love can be something that isn't something that is actionable, but something that comes to you and is just part of your life and folds into your life and shapes it in ways that we are just trying to understand as human beings, whether you're Korean or not.
Can we talk a little bit about language? There's a lot of languages in this film, and you speak German as well too, right?
Yeah, it's my first language.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
There's a German word, actually totally unrelated, that is, and I think about this on a daily basis. There's a word in German that describes all of the words that you don't have for the like experiences and the moments. Like there's like words that are missing that you can't,
Sprachlos.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot because I often think about all of the
I
words.
feel like Jeopardy. What is sprachlos?
But like all of the words that if you had them, maybe you'd express yourself better. And I'm so curious for you guys, and particularly for you, Greta, you were talking about speaking in 2 languages, how emotional that is. One, to do it publicly on screen, but also to connect to it for this period of time. did you feel like two different people? I mean, because like to me, she felt like two different people in those two different languages, and I've had my partner, when we went back to China a few years ago for the first time, and he saw me in China for the first time, he was like, you're a different person, and I don't know that, like I'm just fluidly navigating the two, but he was like, no, you are a completely different person that I never saw before, and the first time that you speak Korean on screen, I was like, oh, there she is, there's Nora. So talk a little bit about how you tapped into both and how you felt as that character.
Well, that was the genesis of the movie, actually. For Celine, because this is largely autobiographical, it came from a real experience she had when she found herself sitting in between her white husband and her actual childhood sweetheart who came to visit her from Korea. And that experience of sitting at the bar, like the movie, and realizing that everyone around them had no idea how they could be connected to each other. And then also the uncanny experience of having two people know and love her in such completely different ways, but in totality. And again, I think that's what's been interesting. That is true even if it's not racialized. Like if you, just someone from your past, it is possible as human beings, because we have this crazy capacity to love and be loved, that two different people could know you so intimately in such a different way. And then technically speaking, for the making of the movie, Celine had asked us early on, she'd asked the two guys, Teo and John, not to ever meet until they actually do in the movie. So what that meant for me, though, is I did feel like I was in two different movies, and I felt like I was managing two different relationships, and I was the channel between the two of them. I think Celine, in her like wonderfully genius and somewhat sadistic way, was asking me to tell each of them respectively about each other. I would just spread rumors and lies, and breed, discomfort. But that was essential to the movie, and essential to the experience and personal experience of what it's like to be bicultural, bilingual, as an immigrant, or again, as someone who finds himself in a place that wasn't their previous home.
Yeah, I love the question about languages, because it occupied my mind ever since I was a little child, because I hated that I behaved differently in different cultural circumstances. So, talking about identity and finding who I am as a person. Because Korean is ultimately my third language, because I learned English in my 20s and
You are such a show-off.
Thank you.
Polyglot.
That's PR training.
Yeah, very good. Effective.
So it was bittersweet always, but now I enjoy it, that there are certain words in a language that are not translatable in another. And I think the most beautiful word in the English language is vulnerability, because it doesn't exist in German. You would say like Zerbrechlichkeit, that it means broken ability, or being able to be like broken open. And in Korea it doesn't exist either. It would translate into like peeling forth an inner layer. So the emotion in itself doesn't exist consciously. And what I love is bridging the gap through the acting in a project like this, where I can portray the emotion of vulnerability in a language that doesn't have that word, and thereby creating an understanding for both cultures. So yeah, those type of emotions always interested me, because if you imagine like a color scheme of like blue, yellow, and green, or whatever like the main colors are. So like, where people feel at home is like in the middle, where the colors kind of mix. But I was always interested in the outer spectrum of those colors that kind of fade, because the other cultures don't understand them. So, and those are like the emotions like loneliness, sadness, melancholy. A word like zeitgeist is like a word that doesn't exist in English, right? So, yeah.
Really beautiful. Why are you guys?
Ow! See?
such a masterful debut from Celine Song. You've mentioned already some of the things that she did to help you guys prepare for these dynamics, like not speaking to each other. I believe like also not touching.
Well, clearly that doesn't exist anymore.
Were there other things that you guys worked on together to help prepare for the roles?
Yeah, it was a direction where Celine asked us not to touch each other until that moment that we meet in a park after 24 years, which is usually not a big deal, but then, I mean, thinking about it, it's like, it became a big deal, right?
Yeah, when you tell someone, if someone tells you, do not, under any circumstances, hug or touch that person, it makes it weird. It makes it a thing. And I think initially, you know, it felt like very methody to ask that.
So
and I think as
method.
actors, we kind of felt like, this is acting, like we can do this. What do you mean we don't touch? And you know, and we're fully cognizant too, it's, you know, as actors, you know how we're always hugging? Like we do hug too much, like it's just constant hugging. But I think in doing things like that, we were trying to understand the biology, the physicality of longing and of love, and realizing, really honing in on well, this idea that like falling in love is actually very humiliating and embarrassing. It's a full body immersive experience, and how we were going to convey that full spectrum of an experience. It did involve just this question, this experiment of like, okay, so if we can't touch, what would that bring our attention to? So when we finally, I don't know, and then when we hugged, it was a pretty good hug, right?
Yeah.
Was it awkward? Was there a lot of anticipation before the hug?
Yeah, on my end there was. I mean, yeah, I tried to repress it, but repressing it, you know, it has like the prep of, you know, I don't know, like I felt like my heart was pounding on my chest and sweaty
But I thought there's no
palms.
vulnerability in Germany, so. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, for me it was very visceral and crazy, and trying to repress that, I think, like the contrast of those two, I think made the character. What about you?
Yeah, it was hard. You know, a lot of this was hard. We're talking about different cultures and different codes, and you know, it made me realize as a modern American woman, I was born in Los Angeles, so I do have that difference between Nora and Celine too. My parents immigrated from Korea, but I was born here, and so my immigrant experience is different. However, doing this and what the script, the story we were after, it involved a lot of uncovering, I think as modern women, this idea is vulnerability, about vulnerability that we keep talking about. There is a guard. Like I realized how hard, it was so exposing, and it felt so naked. I would joke constantly, I would so much rather be like fully nude than endure some of this stuff. And it told me a lot about how far, what I had become conditioned to as a woman living here. And you know, this idea of allowing yourself to be open and soft to love, which is true, which is what we all do, but showing it was a whole other thing that was really hard. It was really humbling to do that, to show that. I think I asked Celine at one point, do we have to show the movie to people? She told me, well, she's like, yeah, that's actually an incredibly essential piece of what we're doing.
That's when you know you've done the best work, when you don't want to show people,
Yeah, maybe.
or you're scared to, I guess. I think I have time for one last question, and you talk about softness in this film, which you feel so much, and I'm curious how you guys tapped into, well, you, I guess, tapped into the different ages, and for Teo, like, you know, you come in and
first of all, I saw this with some girlfriends, and everyone's like, uh-oh. You come on screen and everyone was like, uh-oh. But there's also this boyishness, particularly like seeing each other for the first time that you brought. So can you guys just talk about like ages, because we are spanning different ages, and it's important for the audience to connect to these characters, both as the adults that they are, as well as the child that they were.
Can we talk about all the CGI and
The
the
CGI and the
special effects?
makeup and the
Spiritually transported.
No, there was no CGI. There was no special effects. It was just. There were simple things. Your hair was different,
Yeah.
and there are things that you did such a brilliant job in terms of like vocal, your pitch and your cadence was different. Conveying youth involves different things. But it also, I have to give a lot of credit to Celine in this area as well, in terms of the way we were shooting. We shot it not in sequence. And I think by starting with us in the third triptych of it, at that point, we didn't really know each other. The three of us, none of us really knew each other, but we had to quickly establish that tricky dynamic of one, a healthy, real, authentic marriage, and two, a deeply connected childhood love. But by starting our filming with us reuniting after so many years was helpful, because it accurately conveyed like our not getting to know each other-ness at that point. It was a more true reflection of what it'd be like if you reconnected with someone who you used to know. There's that era of mystery, there's so many questions and things that you maybe have assumptions, but you don't know fully. And then we finished with the childhood, or the middle-aged, in our 20s, early 20s, portion of the movie. And at that point, we did know we had much more of a rapport, but that helped for that phase. And aside from that, it was just like, it was the thing that actors love, is just trusting, letting us convey certain things with voice, with physicality, what like a youthful exuberance looks like and feels like. Voice, my Korean is intentionally more Western. When we first start speaking to each other, she's like this, I was calling her an annoying theater girl, which was, part of it. Yeah.
I have nothing to add to that. That's exactly.
Well, you both did such a brilliant job. Greta Lee, Teo Yoo. It's so important. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for coming.